You're listening to Radio Azad, and this is your host, Ayesha. And it always gives me great pleasure to interview such an inspirational figure and who has done such incredible work in the hardest of regions in the world. We have Genevieve Walsh with us, and she is the CEO and founder of IQRA Fund, one of my most favorite nonprofit organizations, because they are making such an incredible transformation in the mountainous regions of Pakistan. Hello, Genevieve, how are you?
Assalamu alaikum, Ayesha. Ramadan Mubarak.
Walaikum assalam, and Ramadan Mubarak to you as well.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again this year.
I couldn't wait to have you on my show, actually. So, 26 million children in Pakistan are out of school, and more than one third of school age children, right? And Pakistan has about 3.8 million out of school girls, which is one of the highest numbers globally, according to UNESCO. You are trying to change this one child at a time. So tell us a little bit, Genevieve, about what first inspired you to begin working in Pakistan and how did that lead to the creation of IQRA Fund?
Yeah, well, my first trip to Pakistan was in 2007, and those statistics that you just shared, I was really trying to wrap my brain around that, to understand how and why in this incredible country, there were so many out of school children, especially girls, the second highest in the world. And as I was traveling around, and I went into northern Pakistan, and I was on a mountain trekking trip, I was meeting so many families and mothers and children who wanted their daughters to go to school. I wasn't seeing so much of a social barrier or cultural barrier to girls going to school as much as it was an economic barrier and the value system around education. Without the parents having access to education, they were in the mountainous regions and the rural areas and these marginalized areas away from the cities. Girls were getting married at 14 or 15, and they were subsistence-based farmers, and sending their children to school had a huge opportunity cost if it wasn't a quality school system.
And right. So, did that surprise you? Was that a misconception that you had that, in that region, they don't want to get the girls educated? So did that surprise you?
Yes. I think on those first visits, I was surprised to meet so many fathers and elders and religious leaders who were absolutely supportive of their daughters going to school. It's just there wasn't a school system or a partner that they trusted. They weren't being served by the government schools, and there were no other organizations that they trusted or who had come in and partnered with them and valued what they would bring to the table. And so those questions and all of the questions that I left on that first trip in 2007 that I had around, well, what were the greatest barriers to these children having access to a quality school system? That led me to my doctoral research that I then spent the next 4 years in Pakistan, better understanding the systems, the players, meeting and spending a lot of time with the families and fathers and mothers and other organizations working within Pakistan and understanding the government school system. And that's what led us to develop and launch IQRA Fund in 2011.
Amazing. So you spent 4 years in this area doing your research. How was that experience? How did it change you?
Oh, wow.
And you were living in California at this time or Utah?
Yeah, I was in between California, Montana, and New York during that time, and mostly based out of Montana. And I had been traveling around a lot before then, working with this a high school girls program called the Traveling School in Southern Africa and South America.
Mhm.
And when I during the time of doing my research in Pakistan, I felt that it's when I really began to understand the pace of development work
Mhm.
and the time it takes to build trust and understanding with with individual relationships with community members, and understanding how generational change happens through education, with especially with communities where girls will have access to education for the first time.
Mhm.
I really started feeling at home in these rural mountain communities, but also during those 4 years of research, I was spending a lot of time in Azad Kashmir along the line of control. I was in Afghanistan as well. I was
Mhm.
in regions where it was not safe to send girls to school, and where the barriers to high quality education and access to education were much more complex than in these regions where we decided to launch IQRA Fund, where it is safe for girls to go to school, and we can build a partnership with the community leaders, and we can build a partnership with the government. And there
Mhm.
are tens of thousands of school age girls out of school that are ready to go to school if there's just a little bit of support from an INGO.
Mm. So, how does the ICRA fund model differ from traditional charity or NGO approaches in that area?
Well, what we were seeing um, with traditional INGO and NGO approaches is it won't work if you don't build that trust and partnership with the communities for them to have equal ownership over the
Mhm.
development of the program in the school.
Mhm.
However, what I was seeing with other NGOs and INGOs is that they would create and develop their own school system, like a private school
Okay.
that would not be a government school. And what I was seeing and continue to see time and time again is that if one of these school systems were developed and the funding dried up or could no longer continue, then the school would shut down. And
I see.
so we needed to hold government accountable to come into these communities and regions and establish a government school that they would eventually take on as their own. And while at the same time, because these communities are so remote and the government is also stretched to be able to serve all of the children all over Pakistan,
Mhm.
there needed to be a level of community ownership as well. And so
Absolutely.
what we bring is, if there is a school already established in the village,
Mhm.
oftentimes it's either sitting empty or the government teachers aren't showing up or held accountable. We make sure that we partner with the school through the government, through the community leaders. We hire additional teachers. We bring in the government teachers and train them. And over time, our goal is to work IQRA Fund out of being needed or necessary, that the community can fund additional teacher salaries eventually, that the
Mhm.
government is continuing to fund additional salaries and building the additional classrooms needed. And so
Mhm.
that's what really makes us different, and where we we want the communities and the schools to be able to stand on their own over
Yeah,
time.
self-sustaining, so important actually. So, what does a typical school look like? And if you can sort of lead us to how the girls make their journey to get to the school, and then what happens at the school, what's the curriculum like, what are the age groups like? Tell us a little bit about that. Paint a picture for us.
Well, traveling into the Karakoram in northern Pakistan, first of all, is absolutely breathtaking. We're nestled in some of the highest mountains in the world, and these communities that we partner with in Baltistan, we're in 4 different districts. We're partnered with 22 school communities,
Mhm.
and they are at the end of the road. They're above 10,000 feet or so in elevation, so they can eke out 1 crop of potatoes per year because they live in such high elevation in the mountains. They live
Mhm.
a pretty harsh and rugged life, but these communities are really tight knit, smaller communities where the girls and the women are working in the fields, and you see, there's the only real employment, cash-based economy employment is tourism, where some of the men or uncles or brothers will be off and serving as porters or guides for visiting trekkers or climbers. And aside from living off the land, they're really collectively supporting each other in the subsistence-based farming living and lifestyle. And
Mhm.
so the girls, if there is a school, the girls and boys, if they're lucky, it might just be a short walk down a dirt road or trails, but many students will have a longer journey, maybe walking an hour or more to a local school, sometimes with stream crossings or river crossings that
Oh.
get treacherous with the snow melt or in the afternoons in the summer.
Mhm.
And the schools look like traditional government schools in ways. They're smaller schools where in the villages, when we start working or establish a school in a village, there may be a 2 or 3 room schoolhouse. And over time, the population will create the demand for additional classrooms to be built, which we'll support or we're able to get the government to support. Our largest school has a few hundred students and 9 classrooms that we grew from a 3 classroom schoolhouse that had been sitting empty.
Mhm.
So yeah, we've gone from 64 students during our first year of operations to supporting over 5,000 with
Incredible.
almost 100 students now in higher secondary school or university and returning back
Incredible.
to their communities with degrees in education or community health care.
I was going to ask that because one of the cultural fears is like, oh, if you educate a girl, and if she decides to go out, or even boys, like they leave the community. So, have you seen that these kids are getting educated, and are they coming back? And what are they doing in the communities?
Yeah, absolutely. All of the girls, they're especially with this first generation of girls being educated, they
Mhm.
do return back to their community. That's their hope and dream and wish and commitment. They want to see, they want to be part of increasing the quality of life in their communities. And so we're seeing a lot of our first generation of girls wanting to go into the fields of education, science and math education, especially, so that they
Wow.
can bring that high quality science and math, so that increases the opportunities for the next generation to go into those fields. We have
Mhm.
a lot of girls going into community healthcare, nursing, wanting to be doctors, because in this region where historically you've seen some of the highest infant and maternal mortality rates in the world because of the
Mhm.
lack of access to healthcare and the young ages that these girls are getting married and having children, and the
Mhm.
harsh environment that they're living in, we're seeing these girls wanting to come back and provide that healthcare. Like, there's, for those of you watching the video, there's a young girl, Belkis, photographed behind me.
Mhm.
There are photos of her, and the top photo, she was one of our first students enrolled in 2011. And she dreamed of becoming a doctor. She'd never met a doctor, but she knew she wanted to help her aunties and the women in her
Mhm.
community because she was seeing them suffer. And now, almost 14 years later, she's in her first year studying medicine at university in Islamabad.
What a story. What an incredible story this is. And you must be so proud.
Beyond words. It is truly an honor to be able to spend my life doing this work. It is just, this one story of Belkis. You can see how, we understand and we believe in that if you educate a girl, you can change a community, you can truly change a generation. And now we have thousands of girls like Belkis that are doing just that. And it is their life's goal and dream. And so to be able to invest in them and to partner with them and their families and their fathers and their mothers and their community leaders who are all cheering them on is just the greatest honor. And it is incredibly rewarding. And I love being able to share their stories and our work with you and all of our listeners and all of our partners and everyone who steps forward to donate to support them, especially during Ramadan. It's so incredibly powerful. And
it is incredibly powerful. And I remember the first time that we spoke, and I was so happy to get to know about what IQRA Fund does, and just like I said, the transformational change that is happening in this, this region of Pakistan. Can you give us a couple of more examples of how this transformation is happening, and how, like, educating girls is one of the most powerful tools of social change, and how is the community receiving it?
Yeah, well, over the years, we went from when I used to go and visit these communities 10, 12, 14 years ago. Women would be shy. The mothers would hide in the fields, and they wouldn't necessarily come and greet me. They would spend time with me behind closed doors and in private, in the kitchens or in the homes. But when you would ask the mothers, well, what do you dream about for your children's education? They would say, well, I want their lives to be better than my own. And the fathers, when they would greet me, it would be very formal, and that we would talk about their children's education, and they would be talking about making sure that their children weren't exposed to something that wasn't appropriate, that they could really trust us, that they were protecting their children's honor and their future, and the reputation of their families and households and community. Now, 10 plus years later, when I come and visit a few times a year, the women in the fields are dropping their shovels and running down to meet our Jeep or to meet us if we're trekking into their village. And they embrace me and they're like, oh, Mamsa, Genevieve, come, and we have so much to share with you. And I want to talk with you about my daughter's scholarship, and she's going into agriculture to increase our crop productivity. And we participated in the vocational training you guys provided last summer, and now we're selling our handicrafts at the community market. And the fathers, they're pulling me in, and some of the community leaders are embracing me. Some of these, elders that formerly wouldn't even speak directly to me will actually pick me up in a bear hug and talk to me about how excited they are that Sakina is going to be finishing her midwife training and coming back to the community, and they're all volunteering to build her clinic, and they're raising funds to pay for medical supplies.
Wow.
And the amount of partnership and investment and dreaming and planning and enthusiasm, and just the way that how that trust has been built has paved this path for them all to just bring that pride and investment and their own power and resources to the future of their communities. I can see how we can now work ourselves out of the job, which is our goal, and how they're all really stepping into that leadership role. And
How incredible. How incredible. What does it cost? Let's get to the crux of this and our Ramadan appeal for this year. How much does it cost to educate a girl?
it costs $165 per year to educate one student.
All right, $165 per year. All right, that is a doable goal for just about everybody who may be listening, and they can go ahead and donate at ikrafund.org. That's ikrafund.org. You can get more information about the incredible work that Genevieve and her team are doing, and in partnership with the local community, because that's one of the most important things, is where there is local partnership, a local buy-in, and that's the only way to make things self-sustainable. Genevieve, anything else that you'd like to add?
Just please reach out if you would like to learn more, and we have some inspiring videos on our website. And thank you so much, and Ramadan Mubarak, everyone.
Ramadan Mubarak to you, and may God give you incredible strength to continue doing this.